You have sold, I mean, like, let's continue on that. So you have sold millions, you have sold to big enterprises, you're representing one of the biggest brands on in the technology world. Is that any like difference between the regular sell or selling everything else and selling technology? Is that anything that you see that's different?
I've sold ERP solutions. I've sold, the cloud, Azure cloud at Microsoft, and now selling more services at IBM. Selling a product versus selling a service are very different because product, it can be a tangible widget, or cell phone. It's tangible. I can see it, feel it, touch it, everything else. And so a service is more, I'd say, intangible. You're selling kind of the value of maybe a cost savings, or maybe it's reducing risk, or maybe it's just simplifying kind of a process, or maybe it's doing a total, implementation where, the company XYZ doesn't have the skills or staff to implement a new CRM. And so they hire, IBM or a partner or someone to do those types of things. So I think, it comes down to, of course, what you're selling, and you want to be selling a product that is, a high quality product or service. And so, unfortunately, I've been, working at companies that I believe in the product. It works. It adds value to the customers. But of course, depending on who your customers are, if you're selling to a SMB versus a mid market versus enterprise, as you kind of move along those different segments, it gets more complex selling to enterprise. There's more stakeholders, there's longer processes. They may have their budgeting cycle done in December for the fall, for the following year. So it's, if I'm trying to sell something to one of my clients and they already have their budget allocated the way it is, and I'm trying to sell them something for $1 million, where's that money going to come from if they've already kind of allocated the resources for the next fiscal year? So that's where it's definitely different, selling to the enterprise versus mid market versus SMB.
Gotcha. And you have sold for over a decade. What has changed like these days with AI? Or is that the same? Or is just people just, you know, talking too
I
much
think
about AI? What has changed for you in your perspective?
I've used AI. I'm far from a professional, definitely in the space in terms of agentic AI and automating my sales processes and prospecting. And with that, I think personally have a ton of opportunity for growth there. I have leveraged it in terms of, doing some account research, taking a company, if it's a publicly traded company, taking their quarterly earnings or their annual 10K report. And instead of reading through 100 plus pages, having it synthesize that information or pull out the information that's relevant to my product or service that I'm selling. So that's some of the ways, kind of from a simple standpoint, that I've used it, where it saves me time and it gives me some, insight that I wouldn't, have otherwise had without AI. I mean, I think it's a little bit overhyped, where, it's going to change the world and everyone's jobs. Maybe eventually. I could definitely be wrong about this, but in terms of me and just speaking from my kind of use, that's how I've done it. I think at the end of the day, a sales job 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I started, my first sales job 2011. It's now 2026, so 15 years. Um, it's relationships, it's trust, right? Someone is not going to buy from someone that is shady, that they don't trust, right? And I would say that's something I've just is one of my core pillars as a salesperson, that I've seen my dad, and I would hear him, his stories of, this person came in and they were so unethical in terms of the value or the price that they sold the car at.
Mm,
There's a reason he's been at one dealership for 26,
mhm.
27 years, because he's consistent, he's honest, he's transparent. And that's something I've kind of carried, where I think it doesn't matter if it's 2011 or 2026. If you're a ethical, honest, transparent salesperson selling something of value, that's how you build a, long, successful career in sales.
That's really, really good.